What if I told you that Dr. Martin Luther King was a Republican? That probably doesn't mean much to you, but what if I told you that the Republican Party then was very different from the Republican Party now? That at some point the Democratic and the Republican parties switched ideologies. If you've taken a history course and remembered it, then you might have What if I told you that Dr. Martin Luther King was a Republican? That probably doesn't mean much to you, but what if I told you the Republican Party then was very different from the Republican Party now? If you've taken a history course, then you might have remembered that, but do you know exactly what caused that change? Why they changed? The Republican Party had been around for 106 years, and the Democratic Party had been around for 112 before this change. So what could have caused such a shift in ideologies between the two major political parties of the United States of America? Well, let's start with a little bit of the history between the two parties. The Republican Party we'll start with first. This man here, you see, is Horace Greeley. He had founded and was a northern leader of the Republican Party. They had their first meeting in Ripon, Wisconsin in 1854, and Horace Greeley here gave a mission statement to the New York newspaper saying that the party was for those that wanted to unite, that united to bring America to its goal to achieve What would you think if I told you that Dr. Martin Luther King What would you think if I told you that Dr. Martin Luther King was a Republican? That probably doesn't mean much to you, but what if I told you that the Republican Party then was very different from the Republican Party now? If you've taken a history course, then you might have remembered that, but do you remember exactly why they changed? Why this shift in ideologies? The Republican Party had been around for 106 years, and the Democratic Party for 112 before this change. So what could have caused something so drastic for a shift in ideologies? Well, let's start with some of the history between these two. This young man you see here is Horace Greeley. He was one of the founders and northern leaders for the Republican Party, which was established in 1854 in Ripon, Wisconsin. He gives his mission statement of the Republican Party to the New York newspaper, saying that this is for those united to bring America to achieve and disperse liberty rather than promote slavery, according to ushistory.org. With the help of the Republicans and radical Republicans, there was the majority of African Americans or freedmen who could vote were Republican voters, since radical Republicans were fighting for the rights of freedmen with the Freedmen Bureau. Now, for the history of the Democratic Party, who had came into formation in 1844, Andrew Johnson being one of their founders, the original roots of the Democratic Party was against freeing the slaves or giving reparations to the freedmen, directly opposing the Republicans' statement or mission, according to Senate.gov. But by the 1900s, the Democratic Party became more progressive with things like the 19th Amendment allowing women to vote, or the New Deal, which gave people jobs and helped to boost some of the economy. Well, we want to shout out to these two people. And around the late 1940s, we saw a change in the alignment of the parties. Democratic figures Harry Truman and Lyndon B. Johnson, through their own beliefs, the social views on segregation, and the overall progression of decolonization internationally, realized they could no longer side with white supremacists. So they started passing civil rights bills, and with some of the pressure from Martin Luther King, voting rights acts, and for minorities. This started the switch of ideologies between Democrats and Republicans. The Barry Goldwater used this opportunity for this main switch in progressiveness from the Democrats to take the white Southern Democrats who aligned with the original goal of the old Democratic Party. Richard Nixon would later call this the Southern strategy. which took advantage of the resentment on racial integration using racially coded issues, such as crime or calls on law and order. So, as a basic summary, we've learned that the Republican Party was established to combat slavery, encouraging America's mission to be more focused on liberty and the betterment of the country, while the Democratic Party was initially established in favor of white farmers in the South, using their political power to keep their hierarchy over African Americans. But we saw that in the early 20th century, there was a shift in ideologies as the Democrats became more progressive and decided to step away from their racist ideals that they were founded on, while the Republican Party appealed to white Southern old Democrats, using more racial terms and dislikes, to say the least. Since then, the Republican Party may not be flat out racist, but it's unfortunately what is still deeply integrated as part of what they are today, while the Democrats have flipped their narrative from old Deep South to progressive and accepting, or more progressive and accepting.